All right, so Mandi, how did you get your start into dog training? What kind of led you on this journey?
I actually have 19 years in the vet field. So I was a little girl, wanted to always be a veterinarian, and went into the vet field, and I saw owners struggle. There's different things that they can, go to their vet for behavioral issues, behavior modification meds, things like that, but it only works to an extent.
Mm.
So I saw a lot of dogs being euthanized at a young age because of the behavioral challenges that they faced, and there really wasn't a trainer that was equipped to kind of handle the things that they, were dealing with. I had an opportunity to become a dog trainer through a company in Cleveland. Went to school, and I specialize in fear and aggression. So, I've been able to rehabilitate dogs and pretty much save their life.
What is sort of the biggest, I guess, mistake that dog owners? What's the biggest mistake they're making in trying to either discipline their dog or train their dog, or just lack of training their dog? I mean,
it would be humanizing. So we, as owners, a lot of times they like to think of their dogs as their children. And then they try to apply human psychology, human emotions to a dog, and it doesn't work. So every instinct they have is an animal instinct, and that never changes. And we kind of got away from basic obedience. We want to positively reinforce and only positively reinforce. And that's not how dogs communicate with each other. So it's just having to learn their language and speak to them in a way that makes sense.
I bet you see a lot of dogs that just walk all over their owners, basically. Like they have the run of the mill of the house, run of the mill, whatever, just because they've been allowed to do whatever. I mean, how do you sort of approach those kind of situations, and how do you get owners to kind of back off from just constantly sort of spoiling their dogs and and sort of messing up sort of messing things up?
Yeah, it's easy to train a dog. So training the owners is a big part of what I do. So it's mainly about educating them. Because we think of our dogs as children, versus the fact that they're a dog. Dogs are pack animals, so they move in groups and packs. And if humans were never involved, dogs were never domesticated, they would have a leader of their pack. And as people, we don't know how to take that role, so we don't lead them. And dogs are dominant by their basic nature. We're catering by our basic nature, so dogs end up taking the lead.
Like some of the dogs that are, you'd mentioned, you saw that the dogs were getting euthanized, or maybe they were aggressive, or they might be protective over food, or that sort of thing. I mean, if a dog gets to that point where somebody's says, "Oh, you have to put this dog down. It bit somebody, whatever." I mean, is there a point of no return with a dog? Can a dog be kind of so far gone that you can't bring it back, or is it, I guess, is it very case by case?
So it does vary case by case, and I can't say 100% that there's that one dog that, because they can have some issues, whether it's just something in their brain. There's dogs that can get brain tumors that can cause them to just be aggressive, and you can't fix that through obedience training. But when I teach the owners how to lead their dogs, if they don't apply the training, because it's never a one and done deal. Dogs are never going to be robots. You can't control your dog. That's my least favorite word. You can influence your dog. So if you lead them and you continuously keep them in the obedience, a lot of those anxieties, those fears, where they think it's their job to make decisions or discriminate, come down because they're like, oh, I don't have to do this anymore. Somebody's now actually leading me, so it's not my job to make decisions for this pack.
Now you've got a lot of photos and stuff on your social media of dogs just sitting in Home Depot and they're just chilling out, and people are walking around and everything's kind of going on around, but they're just kind of doing their thing.
Yeah.
I guess without giving away all your trade secrets here, I guess, how do you do that?
So it's through the obedience training. So when I have the owners start to work their dogs. They have homework that they practice. So as they're practicing, they're gaining that influence. So they're building trust. So now their dog trusts them as the leader, where before the dogs were super reactive in situations like that because they felt like it was their job. I gotta bark at this person because they're walking by my pack. Where when the owners start to take that lead, I like to introduce distractions because it's easy to get your dog to listen at home when there's nothing going on. You want to make sure that your dog listens out when there's chaos, commotion going on, and that helps to build that trust and that influence. So when the dogs are out, they're like, oh, I don't have to worry anymore because my leader is the one that's going to make decisions. If stuff hits the fan, I know they got my back.
So my old dog, she was notorious for like being very protective when it came to the mailman. She wasn't aggressive toward anything. She's super nice as soon as she got near people, whatever. But the mailman, for some reason, that was like a trigger for her. So what was I as an owner doing wrong that we kind of couldn't get her out of that? I mean, you kind of yell at her or you try to discipline her or whatever. But I guess what's an example of something that I could have done as far as like kind of taking the lead to sort of influence how she behaved when when the mailman was dropping the mail on the slot.
Well, and that's it. It goes back to the obedience. When you don't have a foundation, I get people that ask a lot of questions. Well, how do I fix this? You train them, because when you don't have that training implemented, there's really no quick fix. There's no easy solution for just one specific problem. But with the obedience, a lot of those issues, because, for example, the mailman, I teach dogs to hold a downstay when they're inside. So from a downstay, laying down for a dog is a very submissive and vulnerable position. So from a downstay, they can't be the leader. They can't make the decision to go bark at the mailman and tell him, hey, don't come back here. I told you yesterday, I'm going to tell you tomorrow. So it goes back just to the training.
What's the most rewarding thing about being a dog trainer?
Seeing the success stories. I've had some difficult dogs that the owners were I was their last option, where it was either that or euthanasia. And then hearing just the progress, even after they finished, when I get those reports back from them about just how amazing their dogs are now, that is rewarding to me. That's my why, is just hearing, that these dogs now, and the owners, because a lot of people feel like they're a prisoner in their own home. They can't have company over, they can't take their dog anywhere, and just seeing just the success. So,
talking about dealing with some dogs that are challenging. Is there what's the hardest breed to train, in your experience?
I would have to say bulldogs, because they're stubborn. And they just are like, nope, I'm not doing nothing. And then toy breeds, believe it or not. So even though they're small and cute, they're really not bred for anything specific. So they don't have as much drive as a lot of the other breeds that were designed to be either a working breed, herding. They have a drive because they were bred to do something specific, where toy breeds are just kind of like, we're cute, put me in a purse, I'm good.
Like, what's your opinion on pit bulls? Like, that's sort of a hot topic with, some people are like, they can't be trained, or they could snap at a whim or whatever. I guess in your experience, what have you kind of seen with pit bulls, and have you trained any?
I've trained a few. So as far as pit bulls go, they're a very sweet breed. They're actually bred for protection. They're bred for fighting. They're also bred to be like a nursemaid. So they have the ability to want to protect, but they're loving. It's just leading them. So, they got a bad rap just because of the fact that their jaws can do damage. When people don't lead their dogs, if you have a dog that has aggression and it decides it's going to bite, it's going to do damage. There's a difference between a bite and a nip. A dog that nips is giving a correction. I don't want you to do that. Get away from me. But when they actually bite, they do damage. And because of their jaw size and power, I think that's kind of why they got more of a bad rap. They're very common. People get them, and then they don't know how to deal with them. So people don't educate themselves on the breeds. I have a Rottweiler that I just trained. The owner knew nothing about a Rottweiler. They got this dog because she was big, she's tough looking. And then they realized that they got in over their head. The dog bit the owner in the face. She just went home the other day. So, and they're just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. That was only their first session. They still have a few more to go. But they were just overwhelmed, and to educate them, this is a pushy breed. This is a dominant breed. This is a dog that you're going to have to really put her in her place because she needs that leadership. She needs somebody, because if you give her an inch, she's going to take a mile. Same thing with pit bulls, you know, but once you do the training, I mean, it's amazing. You'll never want an untrained dog.
What are some of your favorite dog breeds to train?
I get a lot of German Shepherds. I get a lot of fearful German Shepherds. They're a super intelligent breed, and they don't really have a job. They don't get that mental stimulation that they need. So they end up giving themselves a job, and then owners don't like the job they give themselves, because dogs aren't good at picking jobs. But once you start that training and they get that mental stimulation, German Shepherds tend to eat up the obedience, because it's almost like they're like, I've been waiting for this my whole life, you know, so.
Have you ever trained any dogs, I mean, that have come out of like sort of really bad situations, really bad, like, you know, sometimes you see, you know, animal rescue or whatever going into houses that are people that are animal hoarders or that sort of thing. I mean, if you ever dealt with any dogs that have come out of, like, I guess, really challenging sort of situations, and kind of how do you deal with that?
So I can't say specifically that I have. I know I've had a lot of owners that have adopted dogs from shelters, not quite sure their history or what the backstory was. You know, I think a lot of times we tend to think maybe our dogs went through a traumatic situation because of the behavioral challenges that arise. So I can't really say that I have owners that have, you know, had that.
Say dog owners that you know, maybe they had a dog and now they have small children, or they just had kids, and then, you know, perhaps their attention is less on the dog, more on, you know, obviously the kids, understandably.
So the two main things is, you know, when it comes to kids in general, people view dogs as public property. People see a dog, they want to pet it without asking. You should always ask. Even if the dog is trained, you don't know the dog's history. So I love when parents teach their kids, always ask first before you pet a dog. And then waiting for whoever the handler is, the owner, to say if it's okay or not to pet the dog. When it comes to having children, wanting to introduce a dog into your home, my answer for everything is, as soon as you get a dog, you should train it. What happens a lot of times is people get dogs, they had a good history with dogs where, oh, we've had this breed for forever and it was wonderful, and then they get one that is completely the opposite. And then I hear from them after there's already been some instances that have, you know, arisen, to where now we got some issues going on. So if you get a dog, start training as soon as you get it. That way you can kind of bypass any of those issues, any of the challenges, any bite cases, you know, things like that. So it's my answer is always going to be train your dog.
So, I mean, you obviously train a lot of dogs. I mean, do you have your own dogs?
I do. I have two.
And what are their names? What were their breeds?
I have Sarge. He was my first. He was actually the first dog that I ever trained. Almost made me not want to be a dog trainer. He was very pushy. But he is completely different, and I will never have an untrained dog. He's a Doberman, so he's 6 years old. Because he is getting a little older, I now have an Australian cattle dog. His name is Bolt. He was a dog that I previously had trained. The owner wasn't able to keep up with the training because of their work. They travel a lot for their job. And they couldn't keep him in the obedience, and he has a bite history. So now he is going to be my new business partner as well. So
I want to ask you more about like dog food, like the proper diet for dogs. I mean, do you have any sort of expertise on that?
I mean, I can't really give like a professional. I can give my opinion just because I worked at a vet's office, you know. And I'm not a not a behaviorist, a nutritionist. So you know, I know that there are the three top breeds or three top brands that you know veterinarians recommend, and that's Purina, Science Diet, and Royal Canin. Only because those are the three companies that put in the most research for their food. They have their own factories. They really put in a lot of data, where you get companies that put more of their focus on the ads because it appeases to our appetite. You know, when people buy a dog food, they're like, oh, I don't want to get that because it has a lot of chicken byproduct. If your dog finds a dead animal on the side of the road, what is it going to eat?
Right.
The entire thing. It's going to eat the byproduct. You know, so they also don't have their own factories. You know, so the quality control really isn't there. They have a lot more recalls. I'm looking into raw diets. You know, I think that they're a little more healthy, but you know, it's expensive.
As far as folks walking their dogs, obviously the weather's nice now. We're finally, you know, it's finally turning, so you're seeing a lot more people sort of walk their dogs. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see with just owners just generally walking their dogs around? I mean, sometimes you see like, oh, the dog's like doing really good. Other times you see people getting, you know, drugged by the leash down the block.
Well, and that shows when the dog's dragging him down the block, that's the dog leading them.
Yeah.
So they're basically following their dog in pack formation where the dog's like, all right, follow me, let's go. The biggest thing that I see though is people run into their dogs dragging them down the street. And their solution is because they want a quick fix, they get a harness. And what they don't realize, because it's able to control the body versus training, you're influencing the mind. My dog walks at my heel. My left hand is always free. I don't want to hold him back physically and give him a false sense of security. I want him to make the decision because he respects me as his leader to walk in my heel. Harnesses through body language. When a dog pulls, it's our instinct to want to pull back. And what it says to them is to pull harder. What do sled dogs wear? A harness. What do sled dogs do? They pull a sled. You know, so the same thing with bite work. When they're teaching dogs to bite, they're in a harness because when you pull back, it's telling the dog through body language to lunge forward, basically. So, you know, it's just miscommunication. It's easy. We think, oh, I can control my dog more. So